I just don't know. Good evening and welcome to the Council and Committee of the Whole meeting for May 19th, 2026. Bienvenue à notre réunion de conseil pour le 19 mai. To open this evening, I will ask for the land acknowledgement from Councillor Ferrer.
Thank you. Je souhaite prendre un moment pour souligner l'importance du territoire sur lequel nous sommes rassemblés. La municipalité de Nipissing-Ouest reconnaît avec respect que nous sommes réunis sur les terres ancestrales des peuples Anishinaabe, sur les territoires traditionnels des Premières Nations Nipissing, Temagami et Toquis, signés par le traité Robinson-Huron. Nous honorons leurs liens historiques avec les territoires et nous valorisons leur contribution considérable au façonnement et au renforcement de nos communautés. Ce faisant, nous réaffirmons notre engagement et notre responsabilité envers la réconciliation et l'amélioration de la compréhension des peuples autochtones, locaux et de leur culture.
Merci. Next is any declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Larrabee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got conflict of interest on the 1.1.1 on the portion of the home businesses.
Okay, and do you have the papers filed with Madam Clerk or you'll?
No, I didn't. Well,
Okay.
I'll have to.
Yeah, if you can look after that with her tomorrow, that'd be great. Thank you. Any others? Okay, seeing none. We do have an addendum for this evening's meeting, Madam Clerk.
It is moved by Councillor Larrabee and seconded by Councillor Ferrin. Be it resolved that the addendum for the Council and Committee of the Whole meeting held on May the 19th, 2026 be adopted as presented.
Okay, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. And the agenda?
It is moved by Councillor Ferrin, seconded by Councillor Larrabee. Be it resolved that the agenda for the Council and Committee of the Whole meeting held on May the 19th, 2026 be adopted as presented.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. This evening we have no delegations or petitions, so we will move into number 5, Committee of the Whole, 5.1 Planning Committee, and I'll pass the floor to our Chair, Councillor St. Louis.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. So through Planning Committee, we have 2 items. We'll start with 5.1.1 engagement, the zoning bylaw amendments. I will pass you on to provide us with further information.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're well aware, on April 23rd, 2026, we held an open house with regards to proposed revisions to the zoning bylaw. Obviously, we were all around, or most council was here, as well as staff. This consultation was well attended, with over 100 residents participating. Received approximately 200 written comments with respect to several portions of the zoning bylaw. And the initiation of the project, from the initiation of the project that started on April 30th. So the majority of the comments received from the public were in response to proposed regulations on camping trailers and home businesses. And that, Ms. Willick has prepared a very detailed sort of, I will say, summary report with respect to those consultations and those comments that I'm sure she'd be in a good position to walk us through and give us the highlights for further discussion. So that's back to you, Mr. Chair. I'll likely get Ms. Willick to.
Madam Mayor.
Sorry, I just want to mention as well that the full summary, not summary, but the full list of comments was also in. And Council had a chance to take a look at that. So the 356 pages was also included too. Just as a mention. Thank you.
So Ms. Willick, if you can provide us additional information.
Yes, thank you. As our CEO said, we did have very good turnout for the open house that we held in April, and received a lot of written comments as well. The document that you have, the staff report, kind of highlights some reoccurring themes that we saw in the comments regarding the trailers and home businesses, both in favor and opposed to those regulations. So if you'd like, we can walk through those. As Madam Mayor said, you were provided a copy of all the comments received, all 361 pages of them. But to try and scope that down for a discussion tonight, the key themes are in this report. And I would leave it to you for any direction on how you want to proceed with this discussion.
Did everybody get to read all the new comments and all the information that has been provided? Okay, so I'll open it up to questions about the information provided, and that can provide you with answers. Yes.
Like Mr. Chair, I can provide, so this a very, very similar version of the staff report was brought to our planning advisory committee last week. Was a very good discussion on that. I can give a brief summary on how that discussion went. So the comments kind of provided at PAC when it came to use in the winter was that occasional or recreational uses were supported, but not as a full-time occupancy. And making sure that that trailer is up to code. It has appropriate smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. It doesn't have any illegal wood stoves installed. And as part of that is making sure that there is an acceptable disposal method for both sanitary and for gray water. And it comes to septic, it was again recommended by PAC that adequate gray water disposal regulations be included to ensure that that is provided on the site. Setbacks was a bit more of it wasn't a super clear direction on that part. There was a consideration for a 15-meter setback instead of the currently proposed 18-meter setback for trailers that are temporary and don't have any attached structures. Once you're no longer temporary or have any attached structures, such as a deck or a roof, then the 18-meter setback would apply. And temporary in that case would be the 21 days in one spot, similar to what's used on Crown land. With legal nonconforming, there was a wish for committee to see some form of grandfathering for trailers. We can certainly look into regulations on that. It has been discussed before that it will be extremely challenging to grandfather or deem these trailers to be legal nonconforming because they are not structures, so there's no building permits. And when it comes to legal nonconforming, you do have to demonstrate that that use has been existing and continued since prior to the regulations which prohibit it. So that would be requiring property owners to demonstrate that that's been used essentially full time for over a decade. And then when it comes to the home businesses, there was discussion regarding parking spaces. Instead of setting out just a specific number of maximum clients, rather to dictate it based on how many parking spaces a unit could provide. So that is certainly something we can look into. There may be some challenges with how we regulate and impose that. But I will kind of leave it there so everyone has an idea of what that planning advisory committee discussion was.
Questions?
Mr. Chair, so the version 2 on page 9, that would be the suggestion.
So through you, version 1 is what was proposed by our planning advisory committee. That was the first draft, and that is the draft that was brought to council for those few meetings where we discussed it. Version 2 is the version that, based on council's discussion, those were the revisions that were made, and version 2 is what went out to the public for consultation.
So you don't have a draft. Say, here's what we want. The version 2 is just brought up to the last open house. That's what you're saying?
That is correct, yes. Once we receive input from council, then we'll work on drafting that version 3 to bring back at a future meeting.
So you mentioned the occupancy in the wintertime. Yeah, for sure. I'd like that to go away. Because a lot of people are using it on the weekend to go fishing or whatever. And I remember we had an old school bus, the hunting ground. And we'd go there in the wintertime for a weekend. And contrary to what you're mentioning, we had an old wood stove. It wasn't up to par, but we'd inhale a lot of smoke. But we had a good time. So I'd love for those things to stay around.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Wait, Councilor Fennec?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, would there be a way of addressing the winter use, so as to maybe allow, like temporary recreational use, but at the same time, make sure that we do not allow people to live in a trailer year long? It's, Joe, I'm really of the opinion that allowing people to live in trailers that are not suited for winter use, is not an answer to homelessness. And it is not permitted, it's not a permitted building in terms of the Ontario Building Code. And we cannot have a zoning, we simply cannot have a zoning bylaw that allows something that is illegal in the building code, period. So is there a way to address the recreational use, but still making sure the building code is respected?
It's certainly something that we can look into. There may be a challenge of how we regulate that or enforce that. But it's something we could certainly look into if there's anyone that has any suggestions on that proposed regulation, kind of as a jumping off.
Because that's something that we had discussed at the planning meeting the other night. And it's exactly basically what you're saying, Alan, is that the agreement was to let the recreational use happen throughout the winter. However, the living situation, again, it's a danger for themselves and anyone else around, right? So. Go see that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also of disagreement, like if the trailer fits all the codes, like a home fits all the codes, then there's no reason why they couldn't. But as long as it fits the code. That the code is there for the protection of our citizens. For them and for anyone around them. So if it fits the code, there's no reason why you shouldn't.
Any other comments? Yes.
Thank you.
Somebody.
Ms. Willett, could you repeat what you said about carbon monoxide and the smoke detectors?
Through you, the direction that we received from PAC was that if we were to allow winter use, it certainly needs to ensure that the trailer is up to code with appropriate smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. There are other safety requirements that I'm sure our fire chief could elaborate on if he was here. That's certainly a discussion I can have with them. I will say that trailers are likely subject to different regulations and building codes. So unfortunately, I can't provide exactly what that requirement would be.
Thank you. I like that recommendation. And then it could amend the dates to allow occasional short-term recreational use. And then it gives everybody the opportunity to go during hunting season and fishing and snowmobiling, but you're still protecting the residents. Thank you.
Yeah, what's your fact?
On the winter use, I maybe propose a shorter duration of winter use, but not more than 7 days at a time. I think that way maybe easier to control than just saying, well, yes, you can use it all winter as a recreational use, but then where do you draw the line and how do you know the difference? You know, you're not going to, well, I'm using it for recreational use, but they might be actually living there. Whereas if you put a short period of time, and for recreational use in the winter, I think, you know, a week I think is sufficient. Just suggestion. Thank you.
Sorry, if I may clarify, are you recommending 7 days consecutively and then kind of an off period and then another 7 days, or 7 days kind of cumulatively throughout that November 30th to April 15th?
No, if it was cumulative, it would have to be.
Yes, I mean, you have a lot of people that use it every weekend or
Yeah.
family long weekend or. Go see if that.
Can't we just put something in place like you can't use a travel trailer as your main residence? Just how are we gonna, even if you put, let's see, 7 days, or you need a smoke detector or whatever, how are you gonna enforce that? Like, to me, we're going nitpicking. Look like the fishing shack. Right? A lot of people spend the weekend in their fish shack, and it's a wood burning unit that they most of them build themselves. I don't know, I think we're going too deep in the nitpicking.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, sick, Conseil Letter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Mr. Council Perrin is onto something here. You put a law out that they can't live in it. Well, but I'm still of the same that if it passes approval, the safety, okay, was with, as long as it's approved. You can't have a wood stove in there, a lot of things that will not be approved. So if it's approved, let it be. That's my saying.
Anyone else? Conseil Letter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think when you mentioned whether the trailer is approved or not, I think there's only one type of trailer that has CSA approval for winter use, and those are permanent trailers that you know, that people park. And yeah, the
Trailer park models.
that never move. I don't think there are any travel trailers that fall into that category.
Yes, sir, there is. There are 4-seated trailers.
There are, there, not in terms of CSA approvals. There are marketing terms from trailer manufacturers, but these are not the same as CSA approval. But through you again, can you just refresh our memory, or mine anyway, about the rationale between the 15 and the 18 meter setback again?
Through you, currently, our zoning bylaw setback for a water course is 18 meters for a dwelling. At the PAC discussion last week, it was discussed that if a trailer is temporary, so 21 days and no structures, that it would be permitted up to the 15 meters. I believe that the comments received at PAC were because that was the setback that was generally agreed upon, but never in effect from a previous council at the time that they were discussing a trailer licensing bylaw. That's my understanding of that discussion.
But that's from the water.
That is correct, yeah.
I want. But the draft at the moment is 18.
From a water course, yes.
And a house is 18.
That is correct, yes.
Conseil Letter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, again. The confusion between 15 and 18, I created it. My son, sorry, my son cleared it up for me. He read the whole paragraph, not only the couple lines. You can be 15 meters from a well. You have a septic system from a well, but the casing of the well needs to be 9 meters deep. So if you only read the first paragraph, it's 15 meters. But if you can be 15 meters from a well if it's 9, if the casing of the well is 9 meters deep and below for the safety. So sorry about that. Thank you, Sal.
Conseil Duval.
Thank you, through you. Yeah, something I noticed was it only mentioned 18 meters for a permanent trailer. I think that should be for any structure. It's the same for anyone else. In the municipality, 18 meters is the setback for whether or not you get a building permit for whatnot. So if it's a temporary trailer, it's a permanent trailer, everyone should meet that same 18 meter setback. Right now, I think the way it's written is only trailers. I'm of the mindset that it should just be 18 for everyone. If that's our setback for everything else, everything should be 18.
Thank you. Any other comments? Conseil Belling.
Thank you, Councillor Said. What's the setback for septic system?
18.
18?
Anyone else in regards to the trailer? So,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I just, I'm thinking about this. We talked about setback from water, and I think we saw a lot of images of the flooding in the municipality with trailers up to their doors or up to their axles in water. And I think that there should also be a concern in regards to floodplains and the mapping associated with hazard lands and such. So for any kind of development on hazard lands, we require it's there for winter storage or for where it's going to be when the waters hit in the spring. So, you know, something could meet the 18-meter setback, but still be in flood prone areas. And my concern would be, you know, how do we keep trailers from being up to their gills in water come April and May if they're left in the wrong location at the end of the fall. So I don't know, I don't know how to address that, but I think that, you know, we have a significant area within the municipality that is prone to flooding, and I just don't know if there's a way to address the risks associated with that.
Trustee Venom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, it's a very good point. But I think the only way it can be determined whether where the floodplain lies, surveyor's report. Because, for example, if you're going to build a house, surveyor is the only one who can tell you whether your house is in the floodplain. And if it is, then your terrain has to be raised so that you're above it. Think.
Three, we do have some floodplain mapping for the lower sturgeon from, I believe it was 30 or 40 years ago. And that is the only accurate-ish, I'll say, floodplain mapping that we do currently.
Where does the line actually, you know, who can tell you where that line is? Is it 3 feet here or is it? About it's here. But it's a good point, and
I wasn't sure, sorry. Miss Wallach, I just wasn't sure whether that was one of the overlays, like from M&R, because we have other mapping from M&R, but I guess it's not really that.
Three, we do have some floodplain hazard overlay mapping, but it is not accurate or recent in any way.
Steve Venom?
Yes, the biggest one we have is Lake Nipissing, right?
That is correct, yes.
So there's no windows or doors allowed below 195, 197.25.
That's correct.
So this still sticks.
That is correct, yes, that is still in effect. However, there is that challenge of you would need an OLS to tell you where that 197 is on your property.
Would this go for, I almost have to go for, you want to put a permanent trailer?
It was just a thought, because I mean, obviously there's several areas that are like these underwater and you know, we don't expect that the flooding situation that we've seen recently, 2019, this year, thankfully wasn't as bad as we expected it, but it was pretty rough up in field for a couple of weeks there. But you know, like even Lake Nipissing wasn't as high as it was in 2019. And we don't expect that to be it's not nice. It's like, you know, I think that we will be dealing with some kind of flood issues ongoing, you know, whether it's every 2 years, every 3 years, every 4 years, but it will be regular occurrence. But yeah, I just didn't know whether there was a way to kind of address that people have the responsibility or should have the responsibility to if they know that their land is low lying, that you can't just leave your trailer there and hope for the best, that it's your responsibility to move it to, you know, an elevation that is safe from potential effects of flooding. Anyway, I don't know if there's any recommendations, on that, but
Review, we could look at putting in regulations saying that it's not permitted in the hazard overlay. But again, because there are no building permits associated with it, there wouldn't be kind of a checkpoint for the municipality to confirm that. That would place the onus on the landowner.
Councillor Larrabee.
Thank you, I guess, sure. On the comment the mayor just made, I totally agree with this. People should be responsible enough that when spring comes along and you know you're in a danger area, you should remove your trailer, bring it to a high spot or bring it to a neighbor where you know it's not going to be surrounded or even at the point where the water hits the floor and probably take it away. So that's, you have to be reasonable enough. And if I would even go to as far as saying, if you leave your trailer where the water is gonna hit it, then you get a charge or you get it removed at your cost or something. Because this is definitely not right to have water hitting your trailer. That's that I'm totally against. We need to protect our waterways.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Estill.
I agree with Councillor Rivard's comments regarding the setbacks. That's what we currently have within our existing bylaw. And if there was something that was proposed 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, it was never enacted. So it's on our books, it's 18. And that's where I think it should be, if that's what standards are for permanent residents, permanent structures. I'm in agreement with looking at something or proposing something for winter use. I don't know. I'm trying to think, I'm listening around the table what that number is or how that number gets reset to go, because, you know, everything's in the details, right? So if we're putting into this that it's 7 days, then how many days should you go before you can reset and go back to 7 days? It has to be something reasonable, but it has to be something as well that it's not a day or two where, you know, it's 7 days and then someone goes to their friends for a day or two and comes back, and then it's 7 days. And how close are we then getting to being permanent residents? Because, you know, it's the majority of the time it's there. So I don't know what the number is. I'd really like, as a request, maybe staff, if it's possible, to look and see or do some, you know, some measured research to see what might make sense. But I appreciate folks saying, you know, they want to use the trail in the winter to go fishing, to go. I'm all for supporting that, you know, and I was here that evening. I listened to the folks in the room, and that's how you learn more, is you listen more, and then you can, you know, establish some of your own thoughts. But one of the things that I know I personally wouldn't move on from is anything related to lessening the environmental restrictions that we have on trailers and the needs for whatever it be, whether it be septic systems or outhouses or different. That's one thing that for me is a principle. You know, we read our land acknowledgement for every meeting, and we talk about the importance of respecting the land and having it there for future generations' youth and their, you know, their kids and generations on. And if we're not putting, not overly burdened, but if we're not putting strong measures in place to make sure that all our lands are restricted, you know, and are respecting environmental concerns, I think we're letting down our future generations. You know, so I just wanted to comment on that, and I understand there's reasonable individuals who have the right setups on their properties, and they live there, so they want to make sure that their lands are taken care of and that their properties are taken care of and that things are done the right way. But I think we're turning a blind eye if we think that everybody does that. And when we don't have any regulations in place, there are people out there who are landowners who aren't respecting, you know, the environment. And that's a fact. I mean, everybody in here, I'm sure, has their setup and that they respect because you want to spend the time there with your family, right? But there are others who don't. And that's why it's a measure, it's a balance, right? How do we get to the right measure to put
items in place so people can enjoy their lands, but that others who aren't as respectful to the environment around them need to kind of pick up their boots a little bit to make sure that things are being done the right way. So that's my comments on it.
Any other comments? I'll see you going.
I would like to request that the fire chief maybe submit us what are the regulations in regards to travel trailer usage in the winter time. I know there's a provincial regulation on it. So could we have that information from our fire chief, please?
Mr. Kip.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and my apologies on behalf of the fire chief. There was a fairly significant fire call that he got called away to. He had every intention of being here and provide some support to council with regards to their discussion on this piece. So we can certainly engage him in that respect. And having said that, again, staff is just really, we're just looking for some direction on these pieces with regards to how we need to approach it. And I think one of the obviously the big issue for us with travel trailers in the winter is that they should not be occupied as permanent residences. And I think anything outside of that certainly can be looked at, you know, for your consideration. If there was something or something on paper that just details that travel trailers that are meant to be moved from one place to another, camping, that are not necessarily, I will say, certified for full-time permanency in our climate, I will say. That is really, I think, one of the big hangups that staff has, because they are not described as structures. They are not subject to the Ontario Building Code. They're not subject to taxation. All of these pieces that really we are looking for some direction on to be able to properly sort of approach this very complex and obviously controversial issue. So appreciate the gallery out there and, you know, the passion of everyone. And I'm sure, as you stated, Councillor Restulo, many of the residents are very responsible, and I'm sure the people that are here are responsible, and they've demonstrated, you know, that they are willing to be responsible. It's just that this becomes, again, a very touchy subject, and trying to sort of land on one particular issue about how long somebody can occupy a trailer in the winter time. Really, we're just looking at some direction to ensure that members of the public are not occupying those structures as a permanent resident full-time year round. So just wanted to put that out there for your consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Nicol.
Thank you. Through you. Under the septic requirements, will we be permitting other options like incinerating toilets or outhouses, or using like a septic pump out system, or are we just wanting?
Through you, it is certainly something that we can consider if we want to allow incinerating toilets or composting toilets. As the regulations currently stand, it would be a septic system that's approved under building code. So your traditional septic bed or an outhouse. The challenge with an outhouse is that you can't pump your gray water into an outhouse. So you would need to have kind of a standalone system to address that. But we can, pardon?
Refit this.
Yes. But we can certainly look at some opportunities for incinerating toilets, composting toilets. I don't know if we have any expert input on how those go.
It's the same class as an outhouse, an incinerating toilet. It's a class 1. Class 2 is great water pit. You still need a permit for that. A full septic, which is a tank and bed, you need a permit. Those are pretty much the only option. So incinerating toilets have always been allowed, no matter what. But it's not your solve all, because you still have that gray water. Which still requires a permit work to be done, which a lot of people think you can just maybe do as you please with that, because it's not quite what you think sewage, your pool, but it still needs to be disposed of properly. So.
Thank you. For, if I may, so you, for people's information, at Great Pit, when I was working up north, we had a great pit, was 2 by 2 with gravel in. At the bottom, This is.
Yeah, I won't get into the,
No, I'm just saying for information for.
yeah,
people
no,
that-
I can't get into the specifics of what
Right.
it is exactly, but it's fairly simple.
Yeah.
You would have to apply proper channels and obtain a permit and install the system according to code, but there's no specific size or specific,
Any other comments? So,
Or just.
no, so staff is looking for direction or information for version 3, I'm assuming, right? Is that how
That
we're
is
gonna be?
correct. Through
Okay.
you, the current project schedule is that version 3 will be presented to council at our next meeting on June 2nd. So at this time, we're looking for direction on if we're amending any of the regulations, if there's something you want to put in, align with PAC, how you want to proceed so that we can get those regulations drafted for you for June 2nd.
Better?
Thank you. On the subject of parking, wondering if maybe we couldn't address the limit in terms of off-street parking.
Can we keep on trail? Can we keep on?
I'm sorry, that's what I was
Yeah.
wondering. Wanted to know if we'd finished on trailers.
No,
Sorry,
and also keep in mind that, like, when we
filmed
discussed it up, we discuss everything at the same time. So we can do this and go to the home business.
If it's about trailers.
Well, sorry,
Because we,
question.
well, kind of,
Oh,
we
okay,
talked
sorry.
about, really most of the discussion we've had right now is about trailers on vacant land. And I had some questions in regards to, lots that contain principal dwellings. So I think that my concern, on this piece is when you're issued a building permit and you build on, I will call it a shoreline residential property, and I would imagine I would think that the differences between R1, R2, SR, RR, we'll talk about those right now because they're smaller lots. We're not talking about large rural or agricultural pieces. But the building of that property is approved and the septic is approved and all of the systems are approved for the primary dwelling. And when you have a primary dwelling and then you have another trailer, it adds to the input and then another one. And I'm concerned that once a property is developed, having unlimited amounts of trailers permitted, like, I don't know if we're talking permanently placed or whatever. It's, we control density on shoreline residential properties. We say you can only have 2 dwelling units. So if you have, once you've built a house, how many trailers can you have? How much density can a single shoreline residential property hold? I don't know, can you have 6 trailers? And a house and a garage and an additional dwelling unit? I'm just wondering, it doesn't quite make sense to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that aspect, I would say it depends on where it is. Like I said at the first meeting, we shouldn't brush everything with one brush and saying it goes for everywhere. We should look at, we have small lakes. Those needs to be protected, okay? Like Deer Lake, Cache Lake, Paradise Lake, Bear Lake, Sheboygan. All these, they need to be protected, okay? But some places needs the protection, but the human around them won't affect as much, like Lake Nipissing, like we had the presentation last week. Lake Nipissing, it takes a lot to damage it, but small lakes doesn't take much to damage it, so those need to be protected. So if you say 1 or 2 trailers on a small lake could be too much. But 1 or 2 trailers on the private land north of here, no problem. So that's where I'm saying we shouldn't brush everything with the same brush. We need to look at where the law could be established. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so.
Do you want me to try
Yeah.
and summarize what I'm?
Exactly.
So from the discussion here, and someone tell me if I'm wrong, we'd like to see the regulations for winter use be amended to allow occasional recreational use, and have some staff research into a number of days or, some way to regulate that. I think everyone's in agreement with regulations for gray water disposal. A couple heads, okay. The water course setback to keep it at the 18 meters for a trailer. Okay. I'm just trying to look through the rest of it here quickly. I believe that's really the main points. Is there anything else with the version 2 regulations that council would like to see amended in version 3?
No? Come say, go ahead.
And the mayor just mentioned the amount of trailers. I think there should be limits. Either urban, rural residential, shoreline residential, lake density. Like, I don't think it should be a one size fits all.
Anytime vacant or built.
Both vacant and developed. We have limits for people that have permanent buildings on their property, but vacant lots currently, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So I think there should be limits.
Definitely.
So do we want staff to try to look at an idea of numbers, or does anybody have a recommendation of numbers? Come say that, I mean.
Okay, another aspect that we didn't see. Look at it is, we have lots that are not close to water. They're out, you know, in the subdivision like River Valley, which is not, no environmental impact except on that property there. That should be, you know, about 4 trailers, 5 trailers, 6 trailers. There shouldn't be any problem because it's not impacting the waterways. They're miles or about a mile from the waterway. So this is another aspect we didn't look at. We're looking at shoreline, but we need to look at also the impact of some that are in town also, but not in Sturgeon Falls, small communities. No, that's another avenue that we need to look at.
No, and I don't think we were, well, I know myself, I wasn't just looking at the Sturgeon Falls in particular. Talking about a lot of people in the living area, and Burner area, a lot of individuals that have land. It's not agricultural, or people are not farming it, it's just they're in the bush.
Mhm.
Basically, and they have 10 acres. However, if we're gonna add numbers, which is fine to add numbers, but I think that's what staff are looking for, is what's that number? Is it 5 trailers per acre? Is it 10 trailers to 10 acres? Is it 2 trailers on an acre? Or, you know, I think it's great to add numbers, but I mean, I think that's what staff is asking in the sense that what's those numbers? If you guys want numbers, because currently I believe at the last, we just said there is no numbers for trailers right now. So, and I don't dispute that we need some. I mean, I'm sure 5 acres and you got 25 trailers, well, when does it become a campground, right? So. Councilor Nichols?
Thank you. In the letters we have on page 225, somebody actually breaks down the amount of trailers allowed on land by acreage, and it actually seems pretty fair, some of these numbers. 2 acres or less would be 2, 3 to 5, be 4, 5 plus no maximum, which I don't know, we don't need to get into that discussion right now, but that may be a good starting point to work with.
What page, please?
225,
225?
yeah, of the letters.
Okay, so are we good to move forward? Councilor Resto?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to reiterate, if we are looking at numbers on rural, I respectfully, I guess disagree with, Councillor Larrabee's comments that there's no impact on, environmental. There's always impact on environmental. And if we're looking at the higher numbers or whatever the numbers are, that there are environmental minimums that we have that are those numbers, whether it's urban or rural, in my opinion, it doesn't make a difference. There's responsibility for environment followed, regardless of the number that's there. And also just wanted to say, because I don't know if we have, but I just wanted to say thank you to our CAO and his staff for putting hundreds of pages of information together for us in a fairly short amount of time for us to look at, prior to this meeting, and discuss here today, because where there was a lot of comments from our community members, and it's good to see appreciate the amount of work went into getting that all consolidated for us to consider tonight and prior as well. We did receive it before, but just my main point is on the environmental piece again. Open to looking at numbers, of course. We're not committing to anything this evening, just to receive more information, but anything environmentally related to it needs to be still there as well.
Thank you. Ms. Willett?
If I may, I just wanted to, I can recognize kind of not making a firm decision right now. With that said, the next council meeting, we will be bringing back version 3, and that will be the version that gets posted for the public meeting we're holding at the end of June. So I don't want to rush or pressure, but what we want to kind of do that second consultation on is what we'd be deciding on tonight. No pressure.
For numbers, you mean?
Just in terms of all of
That's,
the,
I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I'm gonna get at right now. So right now, is everybody fine with the information that Ms. Willett read out about the trailer portion, with the exception of the numbers? So you're going,
No, the number,
no, I'm not saying taking it out. Is everybody okay with the information that she has provided us so far? And then we can discuss the numbers.
she can bring the numbers at the next meeting, and if we don't like the recommendation that was identified by Councillor Nickel, and we want to modify them next meeting, we can do that,
Yeah.
and we can send it to consultation to the public. That's would be my request.
Through Mr. Chair, and that was what I was gonna suggest is that we've heard council's discussion this evening. We know where council stands on certain issues. So we'll get together with staff and bring back a proposal for version 3 that council can look over on June 3rd, I believe. Second, and then council can make those changes based on recommendations made in the third version of our draft. And after our June 2nd meeting, then that will form officially version that we'll be bringing out to the public for more comment.
Is everybody, Ms. Willett?
sorry, just to clarify, our public meeting, we tentatively have scheduled for June 23rd. And we will need to post version 3 by June 3rd in order to meet that date. So if we are discussing at the June 2nd, I just want to put that caveat out there that the decision needs to be made that night so that the version can be posted the next day.
Okay. Good for trailers for now? Okay. So we'll move forward to home businesses. Must be any other question?
Thank you. What I was going to suggest is if we had a limit based on the parking capacity, off-street parking capacity, that'd be a way, because I can support zoning bylaw that will instantly put out of business some hardworking people who need it. So I want to find a solution.
Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to confirm with one or the other. Any home occupation that's legally existing at the time that this bylaw is passed would be deemed non-conforming and non-complying.
That is correct, yes.
So businesses that are currently in operation won't necessarily will not be impacted. If they're operating legally under the conditions of the 2014 bylaw, which is in effect now, they would not be impacted by a change in policy. What the change in policy would do would be address home occupations going forward from the date of adoption of a new zoning. Just so we're clear that the decisions won't necessarily impact existing businesses that are legally operating.
If I could just say, thank you. I understand that, good point, but, still, I think my understanding of that is that, these people will be essentially locked into that property. So if they decided that they need, they need a bigger property, because their family is growing, their, legal non-conforming could not be transferred to, we're still, we're limiting others from. I don't think that is a significant.
Councillor Russell, along the same lines, thank you, Councillor. Just from my understanding, is it the business that's legal non-conforming, or is it the location of the business that's legal non-conforming?
It's the use of the residential property for a home occupation, so it does. Sometimes I think I'm a professional planner. If I am wrong when I'm saying something, please let me know. It is the use of that particular property as a home occupation. So Councillor Ferrand is correct in saying that if somebody who is running a home occupation currently that is legal as of today's zoning bylaw, if they sell and they move to a different property, to establish a home occupation at a new property, occupation would need to meet the zoning bylaw as amended or adopted, like the current zoning bylaw. So the non-conforming stays with it. It does not grant somebody the ability to run a similar scope business on a different residential property. Correct?
Yes, essentially it is tied to the property. It's not tied to the business of the corporation.
Appreciate the answer. It helps me understand a bit more.
Any other questions? Madam Mayor?
I'll say a comment, and I read a lot. Well, I read all 300 and whatever comments that there were. I just want to talk a little bit about residential zoning and commercial zoning, and the reason why there are different zones. And in planning policy, residential zones are deemed to be sensitive land uses. This is where people live. This is where they spend all of their time. And the entire reason why commercial and industrial are separated from residential uses is because those uses are sensitive to the impacts of what's going on in other properties. And I think even more specifically when you look at urban zones. So you have quiet residential streets with family homes. And the impacts of those businesses, home-based occupations in residential zones are supposed to be of a scale and a scope that does not impact the residential character of the neighborhood at all. You really shouldn't need to be able to tell it's there. And even if a property, if a home has adequate property to provide for parking, there still is traffic concerns. There's cars coming in and out of the neighborhood. In and out of the neighborhood at all the time. So in the current situation that is present and what it would look like in the future, there is a quiet residential street that now on any given day has 40 to 50 to 60 extra cars driving up and down the streets, even if they're not parked on the street. I think there still is street parking going on. And it does, there's a school nearby, impacts, the walking and everything. And the reason we put commercial in separate areas and have very specific rules about commercial properties is because there is an impact to neighbors. And the concern is when, if you say allow home occupations that are beyond the scale or scope of what should be allowed in residential neighborhoods, there's no way to, okay, so if there's one, is that much of a bother? Not necessarily. Okay, what if there's two now on the same street? And then those traffic congestion, the parking, everything doubles. What if there's three? What if it's a cul-de-sac with 10 houses and 3 businesses open that have kind of traffic patterns that are inconsistent with residential use? There's no way, once you allow a certain type of business in a house, it's allowed in every house. And the entire character of a neighborhood can change if all of a sudden you get a conglomeration of these quasi-commercial uses within residential neighborhood. Some, like I say, some neighborhoods are cul-de-sacs. They're quiet, unassuming streets, and the entire character or use of the street changes if inappropriately scoped commercial businesses are permitted within residential settings. And that's my concern, is that there's no way to say, okay, well, if there's one, it's not bad. But you can't, if it's allowed in 1, it's allowed in 3, it's allowed in 4. And the kind of snowball effect of what that can mean for a neighborhood should be a little bit concerning. And I just think we need to be really careful. These are people's homes. This is where people live. Their kids are playing in the backyard. Maybe you've got a basketball net set up on the street. And like I say, that difference when you're looking at higher traffic locations, it can make a really huge difference. And so I think we need to be very careful on how we scope what home occupation looks like, because these are people's homes that we're talking about. This is where they live. And so that's all I'm really challenged on this, because I think that there are a lot of great opportunities for home occupation. I think perhaps it looks a little different when you're dealing with rural properties or even rural residential properties where you have a slightly bigger area, slightly more space between homes. And I'd also just like to again remind council that we've introduced a new commercial zone in the C5. Is it C5?
Or in C5.
Commercial?
C4.
C4 neighborhood commercial, which would allow more properties to have the potential to be used as commercial spaces, which does give, I think, a little bit more opportunity outside the standard, just the downtown commercial spaces being available. So I just like to see us do something that balances the need to protect residential character and the sensitive nature of that, and economic opportunity.
Thank you. Any other comments? Revert.
For you, the one that stuck out, because I see daycares are excluded from this, something that's similar to me and something that I saw a lot through our emails and conversations, was home gyms as well. Like, this is something where people are just trying to either make a living, because I want a home gym downtown Sturgeon Falls here probably is the best economic opportunity. But to do it at home, it makes a little more sense, where you may have 5 or 6 people there at a time. I don't see there being that big of a burden on neighbors to come park and go work out for an hour or 2 to try and be healthy. To me, I'd like to see that one excluded as well, home gyms, because if you have it in your gym, it's going to be similar to me inviting my friends over for a fire. They're going to be there for 2 hours, 6, 7 cars. happen twice a weekend. And it's not really, my neighbors don't really seem too burdened by that. So the home gym, something else that I see could be excluded, but I do understand why we don't want to turn a garage maybe into a full clothing boutique or something, right? So you need some sort of balance there, like you said, but that was just one thought there.
Councilor Nichols?
Thank you for you to piggyback off of what you said. I also agree with maybe taking home gyms and excluding them out of this. And I don't really think there needs to be a numerical cap. I think we could focus on things like parking, noise, hours of operation, just to manage the compatibility for the neighborhood. And going back to gyms, I've spoken to a few of them, and a lot of them, they've staggered classes, they're utilizing neighboring driveways, agreements in place, they've encouraged carpooling, and they're really trying to ensure there's no inconvenience to the neighborhood while helping the mental health of our community backward. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? Councilor Resto?
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, I always enjoy listening to colleagues around the table to help me learn more, foster more development in my limited capacity here. But I'm wondering if there's a way, along the comments about density and you know, how close others are to others, and we don't want a street where there's, you know, 5 of the same high traffic businesses. Nobody gets too riled up here, but we had a discussion a little while ago about Airbnbs, and we had distances amongst those rental units for different areas in the urban, in the shoreline. Is there something that we can look at in this scenario where it's a radius for a business, that's something that's considered, and then within that radius it's been spoken for, and if you want to open something similar, then you know you got to respect that. I really think that there's part, and what needs to be considered here too is when we sit around this table talking about setting rules and setting parameters, it's for everyone, right? It's not for one person, it's not for 2 people, it's for everyone, and it's applied across the board fairly, like everything else that we decide here in terms of bylaws. So it's not to cater to one person to make sure that they're okay and nobody else is. But I respect the comment about not having too dense traffic within certain areas of the community. Maybe that's something that we can consider, is to look at at having limits within a radius of existing businesses for that. And so that's one comment. And the other thing for myself, I understand daycare. I understand sitting at DSAB, the challenges that there are for daycare spaces, young families. And we want to encourage, you know, families to relocate here or to stay here. And we want to provide those services through the daycare. So I don't have any problem or issue with the removal of that particular business within this. The other item for the home gyms, I like the idea of a parking space so there's capacity held within a location, because I'm fairly certain if you lift everything off, we're going to get into problems with parking. We're going to get into street parking. We want to avoid that. And I know I've spoken with a number of home gym, you know, owners as well, or owners, I'll leave it at that. And that's something that's agreeable to them if it meets and there's safety and it's not parking on the street. And that's something that's very easily enforceable. A bylaw officer can drive by and you can see what's there. It's not hard to enforce that. But I'd have a little bit of concern, and I say that more because usually daycares is you're going to drop your child off, you're going to leave, you're going to go pick them up, you're going to leave. You're not staying for an hour workout or however long they are. I certainly couldn't do an hour, but if an hour is the standard. So the parking state, it's more of an issue, right? Because the vehicle's there. So, you know, I'm open to hearing others' thoughts as well. But if we're looking at the parking spaces, that's great. And part of the onus too, and I hope those who are operating these type businesses can appreciate that I like to hear the things that you've shared, that you've received, and there's part of that responsibility goes on the business owner as well. And if they can do some work in their scheduling or their you know, management of how many clients are there at the same time, you know, that's part of business management. So I'd like to see that. It's not a partnership because it's a private business, but consideration from individuals operating those type of enterprises that they think of that as well. And they think of their neighbors as well. Because like you mentioned, it's in a neighborhood. It's not commercial spaces. So be a good neighbor and manage in a respectful way. I think we can make it work.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so just to touch a bit on, I think I'd like to see also, I think it's gonna say, well, and you then would have mentioned something like staggering of classes, right? Because what's happening is even if you have 6 parking spots or 8 parking spots, and you go and you have your class from 6 to 6:30 and then 6:30 to 7, well, now you got 12 cars because you got to wait for the 6 to leave and the 6 to go in and so on. So hopefully that, touching a bit on what you're saying, that we can work with the business owner and figure out a schedule that, if you're 6 to 6:30, then the other class doesn't start till 6:45, so that people have time to leave. And then the other people come in, and then you're doing 6:45, so on and so forth. So do you need anything else, Ms. Willip, or that's kind of basically what we had talked about at the meeting, right?
So if I can just clarify that it seems that there's direction to amend for home gyms to go to a capacity based on the amount of parking spaces, not a specific client number. And if that's correct, is that for all businesses, or we're looking at going by parking rate just for home gyms? And if we want to leave that up to staff and the consultants to kind of determine what an appropriate rate would be, or if anyone has suggestions.
So I was reading, I didn't hear that last comment, sorry.
Sorry, just to clarify, if we are going to a parking rate capacity, if it's just for home gyms or for all home businesses, and if there's any preference on what that parking rate would be, or if you'd like staff and the consultants to look into what would probably be an appropriate rate.
So any comments? Recommendation? I would personally think this would be more towards all businesses with the exception of daycare, obviously, right? I mean, if other businesses, if you've got 5 parking spots, whether it's taxi or whatnot, then you have 5 parking spots and people can not park on the street and create a congestion, then so be it.
Okay, I'm trying, because I'm trying to put that together with our snow concerns. So let's say when you talk about how many parking spaces, we have regulations about storing snow on your own property. There's nothing, if somebody has a residential property, there's nothing that says they can't clear their entire front yard and make 6 spaces, and then we're dealing with snow storage and all that kind of stuff. If what are the entrance regulations as far as like is there something on residential properties where it's 50% of your lot frontage, a maximum of 50% can be used for parking? Is that correct? And
What is that?
and so that would prevent something that would.
That is correct. That would prevent someone from paving the entirety of their front. Sorry, I'm just finding the exact section for you.
See, but
Mr. Chair, I still think that some kind of hard limit, maybe 10, and after that, it's.
Councilor Estel.
Yeah, for you, Mr. Chair, I just noticed as well, not just noticed, but reread again that, an option or consideration could be increasing from 3 that we currently have up to 8. Participants, I don't know if that was the number you were talking about. Councilor, yeah, but it was a participant number. That's what
Regardless of parking.
yeah, like,
It still has to be a.
Looking for seating.
yeah. I agree with that. Again, trying to balance, right? And I said that for the trailer. Part of this as well to there's a lot of things considering, right? Neighbors, viability of the business itself as well. And if you aren't allowed a certain amount, then how do you stay afloat in terms of your work? So I saw the number 8, parking spaces. And again, I'll go back to the business owner working with their clients and maybe, and I think it was mentioned by Councilor Nicol too, looking at carpooling or whatnot. And I think from all those active people out in the community who don't include me, a lot of people have a routine, right? So they'll go on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 o'clock, and that's when they have other people you share classes with. And we can, if we can encourage, business owners can encourage carpooling as well. But again, cut down on the amount of traffic within neighborhoods, residential areas of the municipality. But I agree, a number that's probably higher than 3. We're removing it from daycares completely. I looked at a number like 8, throw out a number to start with. And it's got to be manageable within the confines of the gym as well, right? You can't have people follow people within. I thought.
Any other comments? Seeing none. So I'm okay with the number 8. However, I really think that it's hard to base on participants because people do carpool, and I hope they do. However, if you have a maximum of 8 participants and you only have 4 parking spots, well, that means that there's 4 that are going to show up and park on the road, right? So I think that's what we need to figure out is, are we talking about participants and or parking spots? And that's why for myself, I think it's parking spots. You have 6 spots and people on a carpool and you have 8 people in there, then so be it. But you should not, I think the biggest concerns that we have right now, it's not the amount of individuals that are utilizing the gym, more the better, so they're healthy. It's the parking and the safety of the neighborhood. And if you have 6 spots to park, 8 spots to park, then, and I agree with the cap that, you know what, like I can probably put 15, 20 people in my driveway, cars. But I think we still do need to have a cap of like 8 parking spots at the max. I don't know if people will agree. I'd rather see the parking portion and the participant numbers. Because you can have 8 parking spots and 3 individuals decided to carpool. Well, good, awesome for them.
Parking spot limit, not a head limit, not a head count.
Does that make sense for everyone? So
If I may clarify, so the direction is a maximum number of clients of 8. And then
not of the clients of parking.
you don't want to speak to the number of clients whatsoever. You purely just want to say,
Personally, and I mean, again, although personally, I don't want to speak to the number of clients because if I've got 8 parking spots and I have a couple individuals that carpool and that puts them at 10. Right? Councilor Bristol?
I'm gonna, through Mr. Chairman, I really go against my own kind of thinking approach to things, but I'll be the devil's advocate here and I'll use your example. You have 15 parking spots and everybody carpools and there's 4 people in the car. Now you have 60 people in your gym. Then I think it's getting, and I know that's the extreme, but I don't know if there's a way to do both. If we can have, there might be 4 cars, 8 people.
Maximum number of people, and you must be able to provide off-street parking for all participants.
Because I agree, and sorry, jump around. But again, going back to bylaw enforcement, a lot of these home gyms usually don't have midnight sessions. Our staff should be able, and we know generally where these businesses are. So if there is something, or if there's an issue that's starting with, on-street parking, I'm pretty sure folks want to manage their dollars well, and you get one, you probably won't do it again, hopefully. It's the same general clientele that are going to these establishments, but I agree with, I don't remember everything she said, but remember the comment by Madam Mayor, because we have different property sizes, we have different parking capacities in the community, so something that has at least some parameters to it, I think would be helpful, rather than everything, not having anything.
Anyone else?
So just clarifying, if they were to get an agreement in place with the neighboring driveway, that would be permitted as long as it's off-street parking? Yes.
That's the direction.
Okay.
You'd likely want a form of legal easement.
Or just your neighbor says, hey, during your classes, your overflow can park in my driveway. So there's nobody on the street. Some people are kind.
You probably want something on paper.
Something written, yeah.
Yeah.
And then for a numerical cap, I think 8 to 10 is probably a number to safely work out in these gyms. Otherwise, safety concerns for the participants.
Any other comments? Ms. Willig, you. What's that? Oh,
Right, yeah, just what Council Nichols said.
okay. Can you just review what you got so that we can agree and move forward?
Oh, I'll make it more legally proper language. But to say that there's a maximum of 8 participants at a time, notwithstanding that the limit of participants may be reduced if there's inadequate parking. We'll put something in essentially saying you need 1 parking spot per client up to a maximum of 8 clients.
Everybody fine with that?
Just a question, just for clarity on that, because I don't know, sorry. Mr. Chair, is that what we said? Is that it's a max of 8 people based on 8 parking spaces? Or I thought it was 8 people based on
Madam Mayor said
availability.
I said up to 8 people and must be able to provide off-street parking for all, because so if people are carpooling and they have 4 parking spots, then if 2 people come in each car, they can still have 8 participants, but it's the responsibility of the business owner to provide adequate parking for their operations. But that's, yeah.
We're good?
believe so, yes.
Okay. I think that's for that, right?
Unless there's any other sections or comments I would like to address.
Anyone have any other? Councilor Rivard, since you're looking. Okay, so let's move on to 5.1.2. Official plan affairs on housing, and I will pass it to Mr. Knoll to provide us additional information.
Run through. Got me off guard.
This.
Other.
Yeah.
Just goes right from the agenda, just goes right from the zoning bylaw to the official plan.
Well, there you have it.
I'll have it for, I think that's for this.
Some consultation and open house, discussion about this as well, as far as this goes, but
I
So
can
we
I'll
had,
I'll hand this over.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Owen.
through you. So our official plan, with the process required to follow, once we have a draft official plan, it has to be sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for a commenting period. At that point, it gets circulated by MMH to all the different provincial ministries. They can provide their comments and preferred recommendations. That is compiled and sent back to us. This is the list of the comments that we received from all of the provincial ministries. We received 53 comments. So at this time, we are looking to either amend our draft official plan to align with these comments. And the discussion here is if there's some that we want to maybe push back on. Once we make those changes and then council will adopt the official plan, we're looking at July, and then it will be sent back to MMH for the final adoption. So at this point, majority of the comments that are in here are either really specific, unique, just clarity on language, or very specific language that a certain ministry wants in, that won't really have much of an impact on how we apply this official plan, how we interpret it. It won't impact the day-to-day. There are 3 sections that we may want to push back on, so that's really what we're looking for council input on at this time. I don't know if Madam Clerk has anything else she wants to add. That covers it. Okay. So if you'd like, I can kind of jump into those
Yeah.
3 areas. Perfect. So the first one is kind of a combination. So items 16, 24, and 29 all refer to a 30-meter setback. So instead of having an 18-meter or 20-meter watercourse setback, they are seeking a 30-meter watercourse setback, and to maintain that vegetative buffer within that area. I believe that that is starting to become a standard that we're seeing across municipalities. But if this is the case and that's what goes into our official plan, that is what we will also need to put into our zoning bylaw, 30-meter setback. So any input on that one straight there?
Questions or comments?
Can we get clarity? Because we just spoke about 18-meter setbacks while you were talking about 30. So what's the difference?
So through you, in our current zoning bylaw, we have an 18-meter watercourse setback. That's what we have currently. That's what up until now we had proposed for a new zoning bylaw. The couple ministries that are looking to push and increase that to a 30-meter setback. So that's what we're discussing. If we put a 30-meter setback in the official plan, that means we're also updating the zoning bylaw to be a 30-meter. So all the discussion about the 15 and the 18 is kind of a moot point now. We'd be going with the 30.
Okay, thank you.
Which ministry?
Chair.
No, go ahead. Like, I heard the question, so
Oh,
I
okay,
thought
yeah,
you
no,
were-
I thought I put my hand up.
to which ministry?
Through you, District Chair. Which ministries are on the 30-meter setback? MNR, MECP? Just MNR?
I believe so. I'm sure when you have a comment that's made, it may be that other ministries agree, but they
Okay.
see it for the,
But MNR.
but it is MNR.
No.
MNR is the one that's referenced in here, yes.
Want to see Feta?
Chair, through you, are you aware if any other municipalities have introduced a 30-meter setback due to the recommendations of the MNR? Is that a trend or has it not happened? I mean, I think 30 meters is kind of excessive, and I think we should push back on it. I'm just curious to see what's going on in the rest of the world.
I'll see you, Bob.
Based on my experience, almost 80% of towns in Erie Sound and Nipissing District of 30 meters. Something like that. That's why I mentioned it last at the one meeting where I was like, I don't know how West Nipissing ended up on 18. It's a very odd number because 15 is the building code, but any municipal organization has pretty much had a minimum 20. I see the odd 20, like Township of Armor, but for the most part, they're all 30 meters. Some go as far as 45, 60. Like in East Ferris on Osmond St. 60, Chisholm is 45.
45.
Yeah. And that's a small community. And then, but most are 30, based on my experience. I wouldn't say that's where we have the leeway as a municipality to like kind of encourage investment or development, is if we don't quite hit what everyone else has, but you still want to protect your water. So that's why I was kind of like 18 is very odd to me. I don't understand how it ended up at 18. That's where I mentioned it. But yeah, there's definitely most municipalities have more than 20.
Thank you. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think 18 came out when you mentioned one time that municipalities are at 20, we're at 15, we should go to 18. But anyways, yeah, 18 makes sense. There's some lots that you won't be able to accommodate 30 meters because some lots are they could be wide, but they're not deep enough for, the lots that are already existent. Now you need 1 hectare but prior you didn't need that, so I think that is extreme, 30 meters. The maximum, I'm agreeable with 18. When he's pushing it too. So, you know, like, we want to protect the waters, don't get me wrong, this is the main thing we want to do. But do we need 18 meters? Something falls on in the ground to get where, you know, to the water that it's clean. That's the, let's go with science.
Thank you. Excuse me, everyone, please. Thank you.
You know, I think if we do want to push back against the 30-meter recommendation, I think we should do it to push back at keeping it at the 18. If we're saying 18 and they say no 30 and we go no 18, we were likely going to end up in a stalemate. If we come back showing some kind of willingness to work, you know, we might have better luck than us taking hard at 18. I think just as a strategic point, like, I don't know if we do want to push back, we go, okay, we'll give you 20, or something like that. You know, I'd be interested to see recently approved official plans and whether, you know, if there are any that have been like approved by MMAH recently that have anything lower than the 30 in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, because that would kind of tell us where they're willing to end up on it. You know, I'd rather not get into a 3-year long process on the official plan if we avoid it. But I think that, yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Just.
I'll see you, Padre.
Mr. Chair. I think 18 is sufficient. It's all the discussion about the around the environment. We have a sewage plant that overspill every time it rains. Like, and we go after the trailers. I don't get it. We have everybody in town. Okay? There's a catch basin in the street. That's not 15 meters or 18 meters. That's right there. That's the lake. I find that so much hypocrisy, and nothing against just the idea. Just think of it. Every time you will go on the street, on the pavement, there's the catch basin. That's the lake. We've got cars parked there. We got people washing their cars, fertilizing the lawn, and then it's the big thing. Oh, move the house that far from the lake and a buffer zone, and that's my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll see you later, Ravi.
Thank you. I tend to agree with what you just said there. They put a ban on plastic bags, but yet everything in stores wrapped in plastic. So that's kind of the same direction it is, but we still have to do kind of for making people feel good. We still have to watch, not to go on out of our way to pollute. So let's not do that. Definitely not. And what the mayor said, I agree with her. There's some project that I would like to bring up in the near future, and it's gonna consist of the help of the MNR. So if we go against what they're asking, well, chances are that program will never, and it would be, and what I'm thinking of bringing will be very beneficial to the municipality, and it will help a resident to acquire beautiful piece of land and to enjoy, as long as it's done. We have to make it the proper way, so no pollution in the lake whatsoever. So we have to take steps to protect our lakes.
Okay, so before we go any further, I think staff is looking if we want staff to push back on the 30 meters. Correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so with a show of hand, do we want staff to push back on the 30 meters? And we can decide after if it's, give me a second, we can decide after if it's 18 meters, yeah, he's on. And it's the work environment. You can decide after if it's 18 or 20 or what we're gonna offer. But are we, with a show of hands, can I see if we want staff to push back or just accept the 30?
Just a question.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
So I want to ask a question because in order to answer your question. So what would the process to push back and how likely are we to get an answer in a certain amount of time? Are we talking now getting into a long protracted month-long argument or is it relatively quick?
So through you, we can certainly try and have those discussions ahead of time. We would be putting ideally what council wishes into the draft that we're going to kind of finish out the rest of the project with. If we hear back in time, we can obviously amend it accordingly. If we don't get a response, it would be submitting what council wishes. And at that point, when it's adopted by council and sent to the ministry for approval, it would be in their hands. With recent changes to legislation, there's no third-party appeals. So it would be at that point where the minister could decide to approve it or modify it, approve it or refuse it. And that's what we get. So it may be that there's a pushback for 20 meters. They come back and approve it at 30 meters. So that is the risk that there is. But if you want to push back, this would be the opportunity to do so.
I'll say that, I mean.
Thank you. This approval that we're gonna discuss, if we approve 30 meters, that's moving forward. Not gonna go back to the property owners that bought and built whatnot, saying, hey, you gotta move back or whatever. This is moving forward. Okay, just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
See you on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear on the Conseil Lagardé's question, any new build would be 30. Any current repair that is inside the 30 would be suitable or acceptable.
There's a caveat to it, obviously, not a blanket statement, but yes, if you have that legal non-conforming status, you're grandfathered in. If you're doing repairs to the existing setback, you would kind of maintain that grandfathered status.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr.
Chair.
I was just gonna specify as well, and so should there, Madam Clerk, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Once we approve and submit to ministry for their approval, that's deemed adopted by council, and from that day forward, that official plan is in place, and it's only once the ministry comes back, like there may be final changes. Like when we adopt it and send it to the ministry, is that now, as of that date, our official plan?
Through you, we'll be in a bit of a purgatory, I'll say, where both official plans will be in effect until we have the ministerial adoption or approval. Yeah. So
How does staff deal with that where there are conflicting policies?
it is dealt with in different municipalities in different ways slightly. Generally to look to your newer one, unless it is what your newer one is recommending is completely against what your current official plan is. But there can be kind of some discussion on which one you'd want to give some deference to. But
Just when we get to that point, we might want to have some kind of communication piece that kind of identifies how that's going to be addressed going forward, because I think that we need to be clear with residents how that's going to be approached so that there is kind of consistency in decision making and people know what to expect, just because there is that bit of a purgatory. Sir,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so with a show of hands, let's start with, do we want staff to push back on this? Okay, now, do we want staff to start pushing at 18 and bargain our way down to 20 or something to that effect, or do we want to show good faith and start at 20. Any comments?
Maybe ask on the 18th, like have a specific question so council can actually answer. So like
Oh, yeah,
who wants to
So,
push back at
who
the
wants to push back on
existing?
18? 18. So do we want to take a break?
Yes,
Please.
I'm over in a seconder. Oh, unless you
Can
want
I
to
still
do
move
it.
from here? Yeah.
What?
So I
Yeah,
need
you
to
can
move
do
over in a seconder to take. Conseiller Westwood.
It's moved by Counselor Gagne and seconded by Counselor Rest at 8:05 PM. A motion was tabled for a 10-minute recess.
All in favor?
Carry. Yes.
I'd like to, guys, I'd like to call the meeting back to order, please. And we have two more points that we, yes, we decided to. We got two more points that we discussed, and I'll pass the floor back to Ms. Willick. A very brief, quick little point.
Hopefully. Thank you. Through you, the next item would be item 39 in the package you have. The policies that we currently have in the draft official plan pertaining to hazard zones reflect our current this, where if you, as we said earlier, our floodplain mapping is not always entirely accurate. So if you have a property that is identified to be within that floodplain, if you have an OLS that can demonstrate that there is a sufficient building envelope that's above that flood contour, or you can bring the property up by bringing fill into the property to bring it up, then you're able to build on it. The MNR has requested that this be removed. So in that case, anything that is within that flood hazard overlay, you would not be permitted to build within it. Our consultant has recommended that this is probably the correct way to go about it, and because the provincial policy statement says that site alteration and development is not permitted within a floodway. But that is something that we could look into or push back on. Or it may be a longer term approach that we need to take and put some investment into obtaining some floodplain mapping.
Questions or comments? Go see you. Bethany?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I could understand that on a river or a flowing course. But like, for example, on Lake Nipissing, this came up way back. And we talking with the MNR, they had no concern. Because you're talking about hazard land, it's from Leving to Sturgeon, the whole shoreline. But they had no concern because there's no erosion that could happen like the Sturgeon River. So we're gonna separate things.
I think that's what we're talking about is, do we push back?
Okay. Because right now
However, we'd like to, yeah.
what we have, no opening of your building should be below that. So to me, that's simple and it's fair and it's obvious.
Thank you. Any other comments? Question, Madam Mayor?
I think I'm confused. So what you're saying is that any property that is any part of the floodplain would not be developable?
That is correct, yes.
And how would that impact? So obviously, things that are already existing are fine, legal non-conforming, conforming, complying, whichever. One is use, one is buildings.
Started to kind of merge.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would that impact, say there was a lot that had an existing residential and they wanted to add a blah, 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 do an addition, add an accessory structure, how would that impact? Would additions to developed lots be permitted?
Potentially not. I'm just trying to see here if there was anything for.
I'm just trying to figure out what the policy actually means in application.
So the policy that we had did have kind of an exemption for legal existing uses and minor alterations
1D.
to those uses. So if you look at, I don't know if you have the official plan.
I do.
So if you look at the draft one.
I-7.
Yeah, so if you look at 7.1.1B, it says no uses of hazard land or structures shall be located within a flood area with the exception of legally existing uses, minor alterations and or additions, new non-habitable accessory buildings and uses not requiring site alteration or development. they made no comment or request to remove that. So we would then have to translate those kind of exemptions into our zoning bylaw as we have now, saying that there's a certain limit in size or scope that would kind of fall under that exemption, but in terms of new construction, it would not be permitted.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, but did I hear correctly in answer to Madam Mayor's first question? Was that any property on the floodplain would not be developable at all? Or only that part which is on
The portion which is within that floodplain.
Oh,
If you
okay.
have the property and only the first 50 feet of it are floodplain, you'd be able to build outside of that.
simply the vacant land and water would remain vacant.
Okay. Councilor Bennett?
Sorry. I thought the suggestion was to remove D altogether. It says policy removed. We suggest the removal of this clause 7.1.1D, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And so where is it that if we remove that clause, then development is not permitted even, because this clause is the one that says that they can build if the land contains floodplain,
That's,
but the building, there has to be a sufficient building envelope outside of the flood content.
so through you, that is, say you've got, I'm gonna kind of doodle here. If this is the whole property and the floodplain comes to here,
Yeah.
you're still permitted to build in this part that isn't floodplain. That policy is if this bottom half of your property is floodplain, but you've got a pocket here that's kind of up on a ridge, then you'd be allowed to build up on that ridge. By removing this policy, anything below this line is a no-go, even if you do have that bridge there, but you're still safe when you're outside of that hazard.
Any, Councilor Bennett?
So right now, somebody who has a lot, which is under, on Nipissing, under 197.25. Somebody just bought a lot. He wouldn't be able to build on it.
They would not be able to build on an area that's under that 197.25. However, they would be able to bring fill into that area and bring the building envelope up above that so that their doors and windows and all openings are above that flood contour.
Okay, so you can build on it. If
Currently,
currently, that's what I'm talking, yeah.
yes.
Okay, but they want to take that away?
They're saying that anything that's identified as within that flood hazard, we wouldn't be able to build on.
Doesn't make too much sense to me because, like I said, it's hazard land from the vein to Sturgeon, the whole 4 miles. So, I don't get it.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none,
I just wanted to have that number, 197.25.
125.
Under that is floodplain.
On Lake Nipissing, yes.
On Lake Nipissing.
Which,
196.25.
196.25.
No, it's
197.25.
196.22 is our non-damage flood levels.
But our threshold for the opening in the houses and everything is 197.25 meters above sea level.
Okay.
That's been like this for years and years since the flood of 1979. So now they would change the rules.
My question would be 197.25, Laving is lower, let's say, than River Valley.
No,
Would that still be considered the same
no.
measurements?
That's only Lake Nipissing.
Only.
Oh, we're only figuring Lake
No.
Nipissing, okay. Okay,
River Valley is way higher than this.
yeah. So,
any other questions or comments? So are we gonna direct staff to push back somewhat or question it? Is that what council would like to see? With a show of hands,
I hope so.
lift your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, carry.
Okay.
What is the pushback?
The pushback
Clause.
three would be to see if we can keep that provision in, or if there's some kind of interpretation language that we could find that middle ground that says where there is that ridge, they're okay to build on that ridge. But it may do some different phrasing. It'll have to be a discussion with M&R.
And the third.
Okay, the third one is number 43 in your package. So our proposed regulations were that new waterfront lots are intended to be 1 hectare in minimum area, but may be permitted to be a minimum of 0.4 hectares in area should adequate servicing ability be demonstrated. MECP has requested that we amend this to say new waterfront lots are intended to be 1 hectare minimum area. Any proposed lot size less than 1 hectare in size will require a hydrogeological study. So their proposed revisions would mean that if someone came in and wanted to create a lot that was 0.9 hectares, they would need to do a hydrogeological study, which can be quite a lengthy study and a costly study. It can run you upwards of $10,000. So just looking for if we want any pushback to say something along the lines of anything below 0.4 hectares, so anything below 1 acre needs to be a hydro G, but anything between that 0.4 and that 1 hectare, leave it at that adequate servicing capacity, or just leave it kind of as a blanket adequate servicing capacity. And I believe has something then.
I was just going to add that this was an item that was in appeal on the last official plan. And the decision of the ministry on that item was they allowed language that said, should adequate servicing capacity be demonstrated. So speaking with Ms. Willock before the meeting, we're going to try and lean on the decision of the past appeal to see if we can soften that language so it's not a hard hydrogeological study, and soften that to what we have now, closer to what we have now, which would give, a letter. Typically what we do now is we get a letter from the Conservation Authority or whatever health unit is issuing septic permits that indicates that the property is sufficient to allow proper servicing. And we've used that because it doesn't say hydrogeological study, it says technical studies or information. So we're just going to see if we can soften that language and see if we can, because it is very costly. Hydro G can run you from between $2,000 and $5,000 up to 10, depending on the size of the property.
Questions or comments, Madam Mayor?
And in the new proposed, there's no minimum to, there's no reference to a bare minimum of 0.4.
So through you in our current, we did have, but maybe permitted to a minimum of 0.4. So it was,
That's not in the new language here. Is that a separate bullet point?
I would have to check. I believe it may be mentioned in another place, but I do believe that was the primary location. We were relying on that 1 hectare minimum, generally down to an absolute minimum of 0.4. So that would kind of be a part 2 to us trying to soften this language, is making sure we can keep that kind of hard stop at that 0.4. Or adding it in to another section.
Waterfront, C. B, so you're not changing C. C says waterfront lot shall not be less than 0.4.
C was also proposed to be removed, but we'll try and push back on that as well as part of it.
Well, do they want a minimum? Like, what's the intent of their comment here? Is they really want new lot creation to be the 1 hectare minimum?
They're looking for anything under 1 hectare has a hydro G study.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, through like the last one about the flooding. Intent is also if you keep raising flood zones, it's going to flood somewhere else. So similar with this, it's if you keep allowing everyone to cover small properties, you're going to hurt the groundwater source. You're going to hurt the surface water source. It's just there's more chance for contamination, for harming lake water quality, all of that. So I believe that's the intent, but we're also not in one of those areas that's crazy populated. I don't see a big issue, but I do know that it's an issue in other areas where they've had to limit the size of lots because people just come in and slapping, 10 acres, they'll turn it into, I don't know how many lots, but. And they're forcing these hydro G studies because then you can prove that there's gonna be enough groundwater to support the residences there. You're not gonna be like polluting the groundwater source or any stream nearby. So I believe that's the intent. We're just trying to limit the whole, it does have effects. Just because you're not on a lake or near a lake doesn't mean that you're not having an effect on the environment. Groundwater is a very real thing.
Any other comments or questions? Were we okay in agreement, staff? Push back a little like the discussed with the show of hands? Okay. And I believe that's it for. I'm done.
Is there anything else that you,
Oh, sorry.
No, I've taken my time.
I'm just gonna finish this off for you. Is there any other questions from members of council in regards to any of the other comments provided by MMPH that have not been identified by Ms. Willett? Just want to make sure. And next steps, so these small changes will be made. And version 8 is the version that will be presented at the open house on Thursday.
Unfortunately, we do not have the time to do that turnaround. So version 7 will be the version that we do that I'm trying to keep track of which version we're on. The version
I have 7. Oh, there we are.
I believe the only changes that come between 7 and I'm gonna call it 7.5 would be those revisions we did to the agricultural designation. So the version that will be consultation for the open house will be version 7 with those amended schedules. The agricultural designations. Same thing with the special council meeting that is next Thursday. And we are looking at having the final official plan version to council by June 16th. And hopefully that will give us enough time to have those discussions with MNR and MACP and find some common ground on those few items.
Okay, so just again, we have an open house this Thursday. And the statutory public meeting is next Thursday.
That is correct.
Correct.
That is
The statutory public meeting will be open for members of the public to ask questions or make comments.
That is correct.
And council will have a last opportunity at that time to propose any amendments to the version that's being presented before it's submitted to MMAH. Is that correct?
For the final adoption, yes.
Okay. Okay, next up on the agenda, we have Public Works Committee, and I pass the word to our chair, Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So item 5.2.1, which is the red light camera program. So I've submitted a agenda request to ask for us to have a look at options in regards to putting a red light camera program at front and phone and front and gate. We'll pass it to Monsieur Pino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as you see from Ms. Henning's detailed report here, we did arrange to prepare a bit of a report with regards to exactly what the potential costs might be and benefit to the municipality with regards to potential installation of these red light cameras and the ongoing maintenance of the program. So I don't know if there are any questions with regards to the report, but certainly staff is available here to answer any particular question.
I'll open up the council for any questions or comments. We'll see you same week.
Here, Mr. Chair. I was looking at the totals and the costs. I believe when we first discussed this at the police board meeting, there are some companies that are willing to take on the cost, but they get the benefit of the money. Is that correct? Or did we look at that side of it?
Through Mr. Chair, at this point, this is just a high level cost estimate, so I haven't looked into any operations and how there's lots of different providers out there for this. So
Okay.
These numbers are mostly based on the city of Aurelia did a study into this last year. So I've pulled a lot of my numbers from the study that they did last year based on this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We'll see. Well,
Thank you, through you. The one part that I don't mind the idea, the one part that I really don't like is I don't know how many times I've come up northbound on King Street where it just doesn't turn green. So what are you supposed to do? You know, there's nobody there at night. And it goes through 3 cycles and it stays red. So guess what? You have to blow the red if you want to go somewhere because you're stuck there. There's nothing you can do. You have to get out and go press the button so that you go. I don't know why this has been like that. And I'm not the only person that this has happened to. I know a lot of people have mentioned that. That's why I'd asked. I remember when we did the road, why we didn't put new sensors, but it wasn't part of it, I believe. But this has been going on, you know, where you're just stuck there. And it goes through cycles. So I'm not too sure that I don't like if you have a program like this. You just, and this only happens, it seems like at night when there's no cars coming. For some reason, it triggers where it turns yellow and then it goes red on the highway. You never get the green, then it goes back to green for the highway.
You put it in service request?
I wasn't aware of that exact issue. I haven't heard of the light not.
But it's like it only happens sometimes.
Is there maybe before, but they have been changed so that they're now cycling through every time. So is that ongoing, still a concern?
It must have been this winter. Because I remember my dad was just like, what the hell's going on? And then I had to explain to him.
Into that.
Yeah. Because that's what concerns me though with the program. In a town where we maybe don't have the most up-to-date sensors or traffic control systems to make sure it cycles in a timely fashion.
And those upgrades are coming.
We are upgrading. That's in the
We
budget.
have a 2-year plan, I believe, to change or to upgrade the software or whatever the case, whatever it is for the lights, 3 sets of lights that we do have. So that may result. Essentially, staff is just looking to see, is this something that you want us to officially pursue?
I'm of a different opinion on this. I don't mind the red light cameras in an intersection. If there's an accident, you don't clear what happened, perfect. But to issue tickets for somebody that turns on the yellow and then turns while you're in the turn, it turns to red, you get $260 ticket. That's trying to police a system. People are not perfect. Okay, and people will do mistakes. And this, well, that don't do mistake. That grabs you each and every time that I hope this is not a speeding light either, because like we're definitely not perfect. And this would get, if there's an accident, I don't have any problem, you go into it. But as far as the policing is concerned, I think there's always a situation, there's an excuse. That could be the fault of the driver, or then it should be the officer that has the common sense to say, yes, I charge you or not. But this year, and it's administrated from another company, so it doesn't know anybody. Like I don't know. I just some part of it I like, but a lot of it I don't.
okay, thank you. I'll see if I got.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilor Larrabee raised a good point about someone waiting to turn. And do these, I mean, first of all, who polices the cameras? Like, who looks at the pictures and determines whether a fine will be sent to that car? And secondly, is there any leeway for, I can understand someone who's like coming down Front Street and they're just like, wow, it just goes through the light. It's different to someone who's waiting to turn and then, someone's blocking their way or, doesn't realize that suddenly there's traffic and you just can't turn. And I wouldn't want that person to pay $260. So how do we police that? Does it work?
I'll see St. Louis.
Thank you. I think the question is, I think all those questions will be answered if we direct staff to get us more information.
Okay.
And I will just make a comment because I like to keep my comments at the end when we're done, but This recommendation comes from the police board in conjunction with discussion with the current lieutenant, pardon? Inspector, sorry, inspector. And after a lengthy discussion, we were both in agreement to save time and also to have our lights in our main corridor to be safer, even though it's true that when people know that there are red light cameras, people will stop, maybe on an orange light instead of going through, and it turns red. So because of some accident that did happen at Courseul and here on King and Front, those were the two locations that were actually suggested for specific reasons. And our recommendation was also built on stats that the UPP has provided us in regards to accidents and potential safety issues. And we do have an issue with OPP recruitment staff. So we don't necessarily want to have a police officer sitting there just to look see if somebody's there. So it's kind of high-tech enforcement, but also at the same time, it will be awareness. I know we have to put signs there saying that our lights are actually being camera verified, or we have red light cameras. So that's the reason why the recommendation was put in there, and it's for this is mainly safety issues for residents on a busy highway. So I just wanted to add that. Any other questions or comments? So maybe a show of hands by council, who's in favor of pursuing potential options? 2, 3, 5, so that is passed. And I will move on to item 5.2.2, which is winter maintenance agreement on private roads and low volume roads maintenance. I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As promised, this is sort of part 2 of sort of a global report with respect to, the private roads that we have within the municipality that we do service, don't service, that are requesting additional service in order to continue the conversation here. So Ms. Henning, as promised, has provided this report here specifically to the number of winter road maintenance agreements that we have across the municipality on private roads or and the like. As you can see, there is quite a few arrangements that we currently have across the municipality. They continue to task, I will say, our public works crews, but we want to bring this forward as part of that awareness through that original discussion, as you recall, for some extension of winter road maintenance on Pike Lake Road and extension of some seasonal maintenance or summer maintenance, I believe, on Prangs Lane. So hopefully this will assist council in that decision in looking at all of the specific situations where we have a number of different agreements and potentially the peril of continuing to entertain further agreements moving forward based on the number of potential requests that we might get down the line or down the road with respect to us jumping up on maintaining these other roads. So I will pass the floor on to my colleague if she does have anything to add. But we remain open to send any questions or concerns you may have.
I don't have anything to add at this time. If anyone has any questions on this.
Thank you. I'll open up to councillors for any questions, comments, suggestions. Because this item was requested by us when we had the delegation for Pike Road, if I'm not mistaken. I'll see you there, Abby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These roads are not maintained currently by the municipality, are they? The ones that are here?
So the ones at the table?
Yeah, the one Plank and Prangs Lane and Pellet Road,
It's in bold.
right?
It's in the bold right above.
Those ones are roads that are private roads, but they fall under winter maintenance agreements.
Okay, they do.
So they are maintained, yes.
Okay.
And then the second table is roads that we maintain that have small populations on them.
Mayor,
Has there ever been a cost analysis done on the average cost for winter maintenance for a 1 kilometer road? And I know that it would change based on seasonal weather conditions, but is there any kind of benchmark that you can give us? Like, so we see that right now we have winter maintenance agreements on private roads totaling approximately 4.5 kilometers. And so I'm just trying to get an idea, like when we look at, say, the very first one, Ashburton Road, it's almost 2 kilometers with one house. Is that house at the very end of that 2 kilometers?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like we have to follow. Okay.
We haven't done we've looked into doing a cost analysis. It gets very complex because obviously it varies winter to winter.
Mhm.
It varies depending on where the road is, how far they have to go, how far the road is for the garage rate to get to and from. Like when we look at Pike Lake Road, it's, you know, an additional 14 kilometers essentially of plowing that we'd be doing. And some of these are much shorter distances than that, right? So you get into those variables as well. So, I mean, if council wants, it can bring back kind of an average cost to plow a kilometer of road, but I mean, that's
It was
an average.
I didn't know
It
whether you.
varies so much depending on where the road, I mean, you look at road like Nature's Trail,
Mhm.
that's quite far from everything. Whereas a road that's right beside the Public Works garage, it's gonna obviously have a much lower cost. So it gets really complicated when you try to figure out those.
You have other things, but I just thought if that was generally. Thank you.
you. And also you, Benedict?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it would have been nice just to see the same as the other formula, just to see the amount of residents.
On the private,
Yeah, just to show the comparison, like, I know like on our road, there's probably 16 full-time resident. There's Saint Jean Road is probably more than that, just to compare. Thank you.
You. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, through you. I know I keep coming back to this, but I just was hoping we could have an actual breakdown of the occasional winter maintenance for Pike Lake Road, just the agreement, just a pretty black and white, when they can expect the plowing to happen, just to give them a few answers. Because this year it was done, I think it was March finally.
it's typically done in March.
Is there a way maybe we can look at just doing it once earlier in the season? It's a gray area because it's occasional winter and it's not really falling into either of the charts, so.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, even in our level of service, it's a distinct thing in our winter level of service where that road is a unique thing that says in our level of service that it is plowed once per year. And if council wants to change the level of service for that, then that's council's right. I don't know if you want to wait till budget time to look at that, because it is depending on how much you want to improve the level of service on that road. And I will remind everyone that it is seasonal residents, so there's no one living there in the winter. But if it's something that council wants to do, then we could look at that at budget time.
Like to look at it at budget time, and I just would like to see if it maybe falls under a different chart that makes more sense, because it's not really here.
Yeah,
It doesn't really go anywhere.
it's a unique situation.
Just on that comment, could we add the Pike Lake Road, which is a plowed one season as per current maintenance, road, winter road maintenance? Can we add it to your report?
To this memo?
Yep, please. Can we add it?
And yeah, so you just want me to give you a revised memo, because it is in our level of service for winter maintenance.
So that's okay. Can we just revise the memo and add Pike Lake? Is that the only one that we only plow once a year?
Yes, that's the only one. It is discussed in the part 1 of this memo, though.
Yeah. No, but I'd like to know kilometers and how many camps are on that,
It's in, there's a part one of this memo and it's.
oh, it's in the text up there? Okay, okay,
Yeah, so you received that at a previous meeting.
okay.
It's 14 kilometers and I think seasonal residents, we've,
I'll request it, yeah, that's okay. We'll see that, Gabi.
Thank you. Yeah, that's, there's different ways, I guess, of doing this Spike Lake Road. And I don't think doing it once does it much favor to that road. Because it's always harder on the equipment. If you do it once, you're pushing the equipment to its limit. Which, it's built for it, you shouldn't be able to do it, but anyways, if it would be on a regular basis, but after all the main roads are done, then you go in there and you go in and you come out and it's, once the ground is frozen, your path is done, it wouldn't take no time at all for the truck to go in. You're using the grader, it'd take longer, but you would send the truck in with the wing. It would be no time at all to run in and come back and it'd be done. So that's my say on this, and I think it was done prior to amalgamation. Field, when they were in their own, they used to do it. So it's just giving the service that we had before to the residents. They're all paying taxes for it, so I don't see why we can't match what they had before. That's all. That's, outskirts seems to be at, always at the end, but we should all be living as a municipality. Every ward should be as important to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We should all be important to it. We should be looking forward to give service to the people that needs it. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Let's see, Bristol.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. It's more of a question for staff, and I know I did this meeting, a couple months ago, but looking at this memo, I don't think I missed this issue. We did have a presentation, a delegation from a group, and I believe it was Prangs Lane that was here. They it's in their consideration, the roads standard, and they put a request for us to drop that into ours. And I know there's probably still some work to do on that. Just asking as an update on where that might be.
they were looking at summer maintenance and we would have to have staff go and evaluate the condition of the road. So still spring, we still have our half load vault, so we haven't evaluated that yet.
Thank you.
You. Other questions or comments? I have a few questions. Can we add the unmaintained roads to the to this list?
Yes. Yeah,
And-
so we combine the memo that I presented at last council and this one.
Yep. But this valley does have roads that are unmaintained completely.
Yes, that was the part one of this memo that we talked about at the last meeting.
Yeah, but there's roads missing in there. They're not all there.
Do you know which roads are specifically missing?
Well, Spick Road is one of them.
We don't have a specific list, so I have to go through with foreman and apps and try to figure out which roads are maintained. and not
Yeah.
maintained.
I think
So
somebody
it's very
asked.
possible that a road would have got missed on that list.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure you have. Maybe Monsieur Yelp and can maybe help you out, because I did ask the question.
Have a comprehensive list of.
Because there's Spick Road, which is a municipal unmaintained road. There's a Riding Stable Road also. That is unmaintained, so there are a few roads there's absolutely no service whatsoever. They're really unmaintained roads.
Oh, yes, they're also private roads.
Because they're not private roads.
Oh, we should have
but
in our
they're
writing
main
table should have
roads.
private in our system.
But if we're opening up the possibility of doing additional service to other roads, and currently, I'll be honest, we're currently doing snow removal on some private roads, and I won't try to wait to say I have a camp that's on a unmaintained road, and there's no snow removal, there's no grading in the summer, there's nothing, so if we are gonna kind of open up a potential request. I'd like to look at all of them and we can maybe adjust our road maintenance and maybe our winter road maintenance and put a pricing on every kilometer that we would like to maintain and what's the cost associated. And then that can be brought back for discussion at council. That would be my wish, but I'll ask council if they're in an agreement with this. So your comments?
Yeah.
Question, go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe Ms. Champ can help me with this. Way back when those private roads were basically went to resident, there was a criteria that they had to meet, right? There had to be so many year-round resident for them to get that service.
There, Mr. Chair, there is criteria. I don't have the winter maintenance policy in front of me, but there were criteria. I don't believe there was a minimum number of residents. I believe there were to be a majority of the residents on the road had to be on the request. So like there were 5 people, 3 had to sign up to get on to be considered for it. I don't think we've increased our number of winter maintenance roads. I think 1 in the entire time I've been here. Same 5 or 6. So
Okay.
it's not something that comes up often.
Okay, thank you. I really thought that it was a minimum of resident that had to be for us to.
I can take a peek, but my understanding was just a majority of the residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the unincorporated township, it was called the local roads board that were taking care of it. And the government was taking care of 3-1 at the time. Now they're down to 2-1. So, and I do agree with your comment. The roads that do fit the maintenance should have the maintenance. If we don't have the equipment to do it, like for time wise, okay, for our crew, then maybe we should add those roads to a contractor and he could do it. As long as we get this, we give the resident a service, because this is what we're here for.
Are we talking about on private roads? Increasing the number of private roads for servicing, is that?
I think seasonal roads was the original discussion.
There are private roads, ma'am.
No, but are you referring to seasonal municipally owned roads, or are you referring to private roads?
The private roads that do fit, there's no rocks, that you have to have, the foreman goes in and he looks at the road. If the road is plowable, then we add it to our list. But it has to be a road that is fit first for us to take over.
So
I'll
just to clarify, my request was that there are some unmaintained roads in the municipality that receive no service.
Municipally owned.
Oh, they're in the municipality of West Nipissing.
I know, but are they
Where
private roads or?
They're not private roads, but we do have private roads on our list, so.
I know,
see what
but
the difference is.
Riding Stable Road is a municipal road.
Okay. But the concern is that we're just in the process of approving an official plan that is going to allow for 4+ retained on consent severances and creation of new private roads. And so if we as a council are having discussions about taking on the maintenance of private roads, you have to put that in context with what the future could look like given the new policies for lot creation and private roads that are being proposed under the new official plan. And we have a road need study that already defines that there is a deficiency in the funding for the roads that we own and are responsible for. And part of the policy development in the official plan was clear language that the municipality had no intention of taking over or assuming maintenance responsibility on those private roads. So if we're looking at a future where private roads are permitted to access all these newly created lots, I think we need to be cautious about adopting policies that are going to see the requirements for the municipality to provide road service go beyond what we can afford to do with our budget. I just want to be cautious that you know, if we're looking at that, to understand not only what the current context is, but what the future context could be as far as cost, because that will have a great impact on ratepayers.
So just to make sure, like my request is, what's the cost per kilometers for maintaining our roads spring to summer and winter time? And I would like to ask Ms. Enning to come back with that costing, regardless if it's a private road, regardless if it's a regular road with 1 or 2 dwellings at the end of the roads, or any unmaintained roads. So that we can come back with all the roads that are not getting anything or almost nothing, and some are getting things that are private road at no cost to those residents. And to come back here so that we can redefine our road maintenance policy and address the budgetary issue that will, the price tag that will be attached to that, so that we can address everything at once, altogether. That's what's fair for everybody. So that's my request. So I would like to see a show of hands by council to see if you're in agreement to receive that information. Yeah. Any questions or comments? And I know it's additional work there, but
Well, it's very complex to figure out because I can give you an average number based on an average over the past, 10 years of winter maintenance. But it's going to vary hugely on how much snow we get. It's going to vary hugely on where that road is located in the municipality. So it'll be an average that I bring you.
Yep.
And just to clarify, for my previous 2 memos, Pike Lake Road would be an additional 14 kilometers in and out to plow. There's 9 seasonal residents. There's no residents there in the winter. We have like Mercer Lake Road, Nature's Trail, Moose Point Road, Duck Creek Road, Lakewood Road are all roads that are very similar to Pike Lake Road and have similar amount of seasonal residences, but less kilometers that we would have to plow if we opened up those roads as well. But just council should be aware if we, decide to increase the service to Pike Lake Road, you're very likely going to be asked by all these other seasonal roads. Everyone wants to be able to go to their camp in the summer or in the winter, right? So it could be a slippery slope to go down budget wise.
Ms. Nichols first, please. Sorry.
I just wanted to add, there is also a small, I guess it's seasonal, it's a sugar shack, but they produce maple syrup. They've been doing it for decades, so that's at the end of the road too, in addition to the seasonal counts.
On Pike Lake Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another seasonal resident.
I just meant that there's a bit.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, are you also asking us to differentiate between which roads are private and which roads are actually municipal roads?
I think that's.
Which is the memo before you today has the private roads that have winter maintenance agreements.
Yeah, I have the
And
memo
then
here.
you want the list of other private roads? Can we have a comprehensive list of private roads?
Is there a difference between a private road and a right of way?
Chair, Mr. Chair, they've been used interchangeably. Typically, private road and right of way is the same thing. We do also have a number of unmaintained public roads in West Nipissing, which I believe Councillor Gagne was referring to.
And unmaintained public roads is a different entity than unopened road allowances. Like these are actual roads that we just don't use.
No, people use them, we don't maintain them.
Riding Stable Road would be an example of that.
Okay.
Seabrook Road, Riding Stable Road.
Which is not that's why it wasn't on the list before, Riding Stable. It's not a seasonal road. There's permanent residents on Riding Stable, whereas Pike Lake and all these other roads don't have permanent residents.
And one more comment, maybe we could look also at what we used to have as far as the local roads board that we had. 3 to 1. It's not everybody that's got a job on it because they still have to pay for some service, so, you know, that could be a possibility that we could look at. Try to appease everyone.
I think when the number comes in, it's gonna be significant, so I just. I'd rather look at everything, and then we can make our decision or base our decision on. What financial can we do, or what do we do to recoup that money also, that's another.
I just wanted to make a comment. I believe local roads board, as administered through the MTO way back when, did not apply to municipalities. It's only for unincorporated areas.
Possibly, yeah.
Thank you on that clarification. So do you need anything else, Ms. Ann?
No, so just to clarify, you want the previous memos that you got combined into one large memo. An average cost per kilometer of winter maintenance, average cost per kilometer of summer maintenance. And then I guess the summer maintenance, that would depend on if you have calcium or not, grading if they're paved versus that part's gonna get a little tricky to break down for you. And we want a comprehensive list of all private roads, and I'm assuming you want that broken out between private roads and maintained private roads, and then seasonal roads. So we want private roads, seasonal roads,
And unmaintained roads.
unmaintained roads, and unmaintained private roads. Yeah, it's kind of a combination of most of my memos without the cost. And just to be clear, it's very possible that some roads may end up missing on this list. We do have like over 530 kilometers of roads to kind of put this together. So
At least we'll have an average cost.
Yeah, but we also, there's, thank you, there's some roads that do not fit criteria for the municipality to go plow. That's been dealt with before, so adding them to the list would not make any sense, because we can't, all the roads that are private are, that we maintain is because they are approved by our foreman to go ahead and take it. The other ones, they don't want it because they gotta spend too much money to bring it to standard for us to take over them.
Is it a road or is it a driveway?
Well, it's a private road.
So it's a drive road. So it's a drive.
Yeah, well, kind of a lot. But it's.
Is it a road or a driveway?
No, but they got a lot of cottages on that road, but it's a private road.
Yeah.
But they're not asking for, because they don't fit the criteria that the foreman could say, yes, we could send in the plow here. Okay, so, to add them to the list, they don't
Yeah.
fit.
I understand what you're saying, but is that an issue for you, Ms. Hennings, or?
well, it'll be one more thing that like it falls into those private roads. So it's something that I'm gonna have to try to get comprehensive lists from our foreman. So it's gonna take to get this information together is going to take some time because this is a lot of information that you're looking for.
Yeah. But if the private roads aren't up to specs and we don't do snow removal or summer maintenance, do we just eliminate those?
Might as well.
We can list them, I think, for information. If we're gonna gather the information, we may as well gather the information. Sure.
I mean, we have a list of all of our, it's just
Roads.
it's complicated. You're asking for a lot of.
Does the road need study have any of the information? I mean, not obviously on the private roads, but on.
Well, all the roads are listed in the road needs study. That's got a comprehensive list of everything, right? So it's.
Okay. Mr. Better.
Mr. Chair, wouldn't it be simpler just to get an average cost of 1 kilometer that it costs to open the wind pipe? And then if somebody, if we decide that, yes, we're gonna go ahead with somebody who wants to apply with, then all they have to do is put up their road up to standard. That you say it's okay. And then we don't, I don't know, I don't think we need all those research.
But an average cost wouldn't necessarily apply to one specific road. It would apply to all the roads in the municipality in general.
Yes.
So if somebody, for example, say Nature's Trail, which is quite far, they decide that they want this, then the cost is going to be much, much higher than a road that is located much closer to a municipal garage.
The road you're talking about is abutting to one of our roads, I assume. So you're going by there, so it's gonna be the same average out price. You know what I mean?
Every time we get this question, then a price for that specific road. It's just an average price would be an average price for.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If we get an average price across the municipality for 1 kilometer, then every road that we have in the municipality, I'm sure, are abutting to one of our roads already. So it's just another time consuming a bit to go in that road.
For the roads that are abutting, yes, I guess that would work.
That's what I
For
mean.
the other roads, because as I said, if you open it up to one, then there's others that may ask for it and they're not all
So some of them are not abutting to an open road.
correct.
Good.
Riding Sable Road.
Yeah.
That's one example.
Okay, it's on the 17th.
And they got permanent.
There's 3 permanent residents there.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
so the grader operator has to drive all the way there to the snow and then it's gotta drive back to the garage here in Sturdy.
Okay.
Or the truck.
Or whatever he turns off Golf Course Road, if that's the last road there or whatever.
Okay, good. I just assumed that every road, okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think I've got an idea of what to bring back.
Other questions by council? Yeah, I'm done. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we'll move on to 5.3, sewer and water. I'll pass the floor to Councilor Penderin. Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'll have the floor to Mr. Bidon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and recognizing that this is a long-standing item, standing for quite some time. I will appreciate everybody's sort of patience as we run through this update. And you also have my reassurance that obviously that as senior staff and your CAO, we are looking to move forward on this piece. We've run into quite a few hangups and snares, I will say, throughout this process. And again, I've had some conversation with some of you in this room about our digester roofs and our dewatering system and how this continues to be a significant burden on our budgeting. However, this is, again, I will preface by saying a complex issue where we've run into consultants that have suggested a certain direction, and we've obviously realized that particular direction is very, very costly compared to perhaps some different opportunities or different options. And Ms. Henning has provided a report here. I'm sure all of you have read and digested, no pun intended. So again, you see how this has been I appreciate it's controversial and that there's an expectation from council that this was to move forward. And as you can see, our next steps really do detail that this is going to take some additional time based on now a different direction that we need to take, where we're not looking at rehabbing, we're not looking at fixing, we're looking at full replacement. And that will necessarily take an additional some additional sort of consultation and engineering work to be that will necessarily set this project back a little bit. But again, to continue to have my reassurances that we will be on top of this project. And we'll continue to bring these updates to council with respect to anticipated costs, schedules, construction schedules, and whatnot. I will leave those comments there, and I will certainly pass the torch off to my colleague, Ms. Hanning. Thank you for preparing the report and for being diligent in providing this update. Although I'm sure many of you is not what you want to hear, but just essentially the reality. So I urge you to just be patient and continue to be patient on this piece.
All right. Any questions? Pass it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Is it? I think you just wanted an update to see where we were at. Okay, thank you very much. That does conclude the committee of the whole portion of the meeting. We'll move on to item number 6, regular meetings. 6.1, our consent agenda.
It is moved by Councillor Larrabee and seconded by Councillor Ferrin. Be it resolved that the consent agenda for the council and committee of the whole meeting held on May the 19th, 2026 be approved as presented.
Okay. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Ferrin, seconded by Councillor Larrabee. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2026-37 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2014-45 to rezone certain lands located at 223 Laclau Road from rural RU to rural residential RR shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Questions, comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Larrabee and seconded by Councillor Ferrin. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2026-38 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2014-45 to rezone certain lands located at 131 Highway 539A from open space OS to residential 1 R1 shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
I actually have a question. Why is it R1 and not shoreline residential?
Because it's within the settlement boundary, the
Okay.
settlement area. We're going to an R1 and it does align with the residential
Shoreline.
zones that are aligned.
Will still be in effect for setbacks and everything.
There is shoreline setback, yes.
Other questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Ferrin, seconded by Councillor Larrabee. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2026-39 being a bylaw of the municipality of West Nipissing to execute a subdivision agreement with Joseph and Lise Minard shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Next, 6.3, there's a couple of pieces of correspondence there for your review. If you have any questions on either of those pieces, I'm happy. Otherwise, we'll move on to 6.4. Okay, 6.4, new business.
It is moved by Councillor Nichol and seconded by Councillor Restool. Be it resolved that the Council for the West Nipissing Municipality declares the Burner Ram Rodeo to be held on August 28th through 30th, 2026 at 141 Milvan Road in Burner, hosted by Caroline Marks and Serge Lafreniere, owners of the Northern Range Horse and Cattle, to be a municipally significant event.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Restool and seconded by Councillor Nichol. Whereas the Association of Municipalities of Ontario is holding elections for the 2026-2028 AMO Board of Directors, and whereas Mayor Kathleen Rochon has indicated an interest in seeking election to the AMO Board of Directors, be it therefore resolved that Council for the West Nipissing Municipality endorses the nomination of Mayor Rochon for election to the 2026-2028 AMO Board of Directors, and be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
Questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. You.
It is moved by Councillor Nichol and seconded by Councillor Restool. Whereas Jason and Sandy Gagnon have requested a noise exemption permit for an outdoor neighborhood event to be held at 87 Tamarack Avenue on Sunday, July 12th, 2026, between the hours of 3 and 6 p.m. And whereas the event will include live music entertainment, be it resolved that Council for the West Nipissing Municipality approves the issuance of a noise exemption to Jason and Sandy Gaindon for the outdoor event to be held at 87 Tamarack on Sunday, July 12th, 2026 from 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Restul and seconded by Councillor Nichol. Whereas the West Nipissing Child Care Corporation has submitted a discretionary grant and fee waiver application requesting the waiver of fees for the use of the Marcel Noel Hall with kitchen for mandatory staff training. And whereas the value of the requested fee waiver is $970, be it resolved that council approves the request from the West Nipissing Child Care Corporation for the fee waiver in the amount of $970 for the use of the Marcel Noel Hall and kitchen for staff training purposes.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Nichol and seconded by Councillor Restul. Whereas Les Compagnons de Franc Loisir, in collaboration with the Club Richelieu in Sturgeon Falls, has submitted a discretionary grant and fee waiver application requesting the fee waiver of fees for the use of the arena for a bike rodeo. And whereas the value of the requested waiver is $650, be it resolved that council approves the request from Les Compagnons de Franc Loisir for a fee waiver in the amount of $650 for the use of the arena for bike rodeo.
Any questions, comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Nichol and seconded by Councillor Restul. Whereas Council for the West Nipissing Municipality has adopted the volunteer recognition policy on May the 5th, 2026, pursuant to resolution number 2026-162. And whereas the volunteer recognition policy establishes a selection committee consisting of the mayor and 2 members of council and 2 municipal staff, with members of council to be appointed by the mayor, be it resolved that Council for the West Nipissing Municipality acknowledges the appointment of
I thought it was discussed. It was said. Councillor Nichol, yes. Councillor Nichol, Councillor Rivard, and myself, I believe. Is it 3? Let's see.
Yeah.
Two. Yes. Okay. So it's Councillor. That's the recollection of everybody when we discussed it at the last meeting. It was going to be Councillor Rivard and Councillor Nichol on that committee. Okay. I'm going to read it as such, and if somebody wants to vote against
Be it resolved that the Council for the West Nipissing Municipality acknowledges the appointment of Councillors Nichol and Rivard to the Volunteer Recognition Selection Committee for the remainder of the 2020-26 term of council.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. We have one addendum.
It is moved by Councillor Rivard,
Moved, not
It is
removed.
moved by Councillor Restul and seconded by Councillor Nichol. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2026-40, being a bylaw to appoint a municipal law enforcement officer for the West Nipissing Municipality, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. And we don't have long aisles. All I will say is that there is an open house in regards for official plan Thursday council chambers from 6 o'clock, 6 to 8 p.m. We do welcome all residents to attend, ask questions, and there will be an additional public statutory meeting held on the following Thursday,
28.
which is in May the 28th, starting at 6 p.m. And that will be an open forum. It will be a formal council meeting and an opportunity both residents and council to ask questions on the official plan before any final amendments and approval by. With that, I work right under the gun, so we'll take a motion to adjourn.
It is moved by Councillor Nichol and seconded by Councillor Restul. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2026-36, being a bylaw of the municipality of West Nipissing, to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on May the 19th, 2026, come into force and take effect.
Okay, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Nichol and seconded by Councillor Nichol. Be it resolved that the council and committee of the whole meeting held on May the 19th, 2026, be adjourned.